But I wanted to start with my little monologue rant, which is about the two-tier justice. They really don't get us, our elite. Tony Blair has said out loud, literally allowed it to be published, that he wants to bring in digital ID cards to fight populism. Right? Populism just means democracy. Populism just means the thoughts and opinions of ordinary people, which is what any democracy should be trying to listen to and do. The thoughts and opinions of a small group of elite people is not democracy. That's not what a democracy is. We're supposed to be a democracy. So Tony Blair has effectively declared war on democracy. He's an idiot. And I want to explain, I'm sure we all know, but what is behind this two-tier stuff. And it's this idea that laws don't apply to us all equally. Fundamentally in our hearts, we want the laws to apply equally. Because fundamentally in our hearts, we are good people, we're the lovelies, and we are a rule of law nation. And the rule of law should apply equally to all of us. That's what it means to have the rule of law. And we all instinctively cry out for it. And this chap getting off smacks against that. It goes against that feeling. He called for the throats of right-wingers whom he called Nazis, slurred as Nazis, to be cut. That's quite vicious and nasty. I'm not like my friend Claire Fox. I'm not a free speech absolutist. So I do think that if you make death threats, I think that I would want a system that doesn't allow you to make death threats. I would want a system that doesn't allow you to call for your political opponents to be killed. And really, I would like a system where morally we all know that you shouldn't call for your political opponent to be killed, that it's a deeply immoral thing to do, and that it's just not, I don't care how we frame it, just not cricket, just not British, not on. Okay? That's not on. It's not how I'm raising small person. So this gentleman, I should stop calling him gentleman. This man got off and probably thinks he's terribly clever. And I think he's a poor example of a human being. I think he's a failed example of a human being with no honor and no dignity. And therefore that he has made himself of less value to the world by choosing to be a man without honor. And any man who chooses to be a man without honor makes themselves less valuable to the world. I had a lovely lengthy chat with Nana Akua before this and before LBC, because I'm going on Sunday. We need a plan. And I adore Nana Akua. Many of you probably also know I adore Chris Rose. We will have mad conversations about racism and what they say racism is, and how you simply, it only exists in their head because they're mad enough to believe that any of us would be racist. Why would we be? We are men and women of honor. It's just insane. And I think this gentleman has made himself a man of no honor and a man of lesser value for that. And I think we all instinctively feel that there's two-tier justice. I think that there was disordinate and disgraceful pressure put on Lucy Connolly to plead guilty, and then a sort of mild conspiracy by my fellow lawyers to go around saying, well, of course she was obviously guilty, which you can do once they plead guilty, because you can't get sued in defamation if they pled guilty. But there were certainly arguments to be explored, and it may well be that the right outcome happened in this case, because it may well be that actually the public and you all feel that we should have freer speech than we technically do in law. But I think that courtesy should extend equally to Lucy Connolly. And the same courtesy, if that's what we're going to do as a nation, to say, well, we've got these technical laws, but we're going to use the mechanism of the jury to regulate that, which is a perfectly sensible mechanism, by the way. It's not necessarily essential for you to have laws that are 100% enforced. And it's very, very easy for any system in which there's 100% enforcement of the law for that to become tyrannical. Okay, and that's something I think that the English in particular inherently eschew. The Germans really like enforcing every law, and it does end up a bit machine-like. It's just not on. I have stood by the road, Trump wanting to cross a road in Dusseldorf when there are no cars for quite some visible distance. And I grew up in rural Worcestershire. So my bravery in crossing the road really is when there are no cars on the road. That's when I normally cross. That's the normal state of being. And there were no cars on this road in Dusseldorf, yet everybody, dutifully waited for the green man because we cannot cross the road without the green man. And it's like, well, you be you, Germany. Maybe we'll be a little less rule obsessive. But what we do want and what we feel in our absolute bones is that the same thing, whatever it is, if it's a generosity or a kindness or an enforcement of a rule, should apply to everybody. And there should be no special treatment. That's what tends to rile us up. And that's at the heart of this two-tier anger. By the way, if anybody felt a strong wind as something you couldn't quite see rushed past you to the right, that's what we call the Overton window, which is what is acceptable in politics. And it's moved so far to the right so quickly that I think I'm now officially far left. So I'm now technically, I think, deemed a communist because, Chris Philp and Robert Jenrick were just pouncing on this all out. Nick Timothy is being marvellous on the migrant hotels. Katie Lamb is being marvellous. The Tory party seems to have mildly woken up. We'll see what happens there, but at least theoretically that is better. We simply cannot carry on doing obviously stupid things for performative reasons. Now, if you have a job in the public sector where you got it by doing or supporting obviously stupid things for performative reasons, you're going to be really reluctant to admit that. But that is where we're going to get to. And it's a sign of hope, I think, for our country, how the reaction to this verdict has gone. Watch them batten down. Watch the regime shills, the apologists for the state of now desperately try and argue that things are okay, and watch the British public look at them like they're being offered a cup of cold sick. We do have a deep sense of fairness, Denise, and more than that, because I have many diverse friends. I take the view of one of the judges I most value in our system ever was Lord Mansfield. And back in the day, Lord Mansfield, this is the 1600s, Lord Mansfield said, "Oh, the air of England is too pure for a slave to breathe. So if a slave merely breathes the air of England, they become free." Nobody'd ever done this. This is completely mad. There was slavery all around the world, and there had been for tens of thousands of years, and it was a human norm. And Lord Mansfield just said, "Well, the air of England frees a slave. It just does. It's too pure." And I do believe that our air is magical, and I don't care how eccentric that sounds. I believe it frees slaves automatically. And I believe that just breathing our air will civilize anybody and makes us decent and good, and makes us dislike unfairness, and makes us dislike these things. And that's where we sort of get it all from, which is why it doesn't matter that my ethno roots are probably, Northern Germanic. We've got people who've got roots from Scandinavia, which are different from mine. We've got people who've got roots from Rome. We've got people who've got roots from Celts. We've got all sorts of other different ethnoses long before the word racism was ever invented in a DEI training camp. We all got along by just breathing the air of England and accepting that we were British and accepting that there's a certain way that we behave. Multiculturalism was always the mistake. Multi-ethnic, yes, but we have one broad culture. The fact that our broad culture is actually quite tolerant and quite forgiving doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's what the idiots have done. They've managed to convince themselves that our culture doesn't exist. Oh, well, yes, there is Hillary. Hillary points out muck spreading, which I grew up with. So no sympathy there, Hillary. And it's good for the fields. My grandfather used to like it and used to say it was, the smell of nature. I've never liked it, but I do accept it as a necessity. And I suspect muck spreading is back because we've made producing fertilizer so expensive. That's one of the many ways that we self-harm under net zero. So net zero, not just making us colder, also making us poorer, also making us return to more traditional farming methods because we have no choice. We can't just buy loads of cheap fertilizer because fertilizer costs bucket loads because it requires energy to make. And, Mad Ed has made energy ridiculously expensive. I think we've almost destroyed our fertilizer industry. The EU's almost destroyed theirs. These geniuses we have in charge who are committing mass scale self-harm really do need a reckoning day, and they're going to get. On to questions. Arrogant says, there must be some evidence of Keir Starmer's constant lies for him to be investigated by the Privilege Committee. Yes, and I called for this. I literally said that they should summon the kangaroos back and get a kangaroo court and investigate Starmer. Although this time they could follow the rule of law. They don't seem to have any appetite for that. The Speaker is an absolute disgrace. As a result, I'll say this as an exclusive here, but because I often work out what my position is going to be long in advance of the event. And then it's only when an event happens, I go, well, blah, 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 blah. That's why I can often feel quite prepared or quite quick. And it's not quick. It's like a swan. I've just done all the work before. And there is only a very weak and loose convention against standing against the Speaker of the House of Commons. It's not law. It's not binding. It's not enforceable. And so when the time comes, as an exclusive to you all, I am going to call for somebody to stand against the Speaker of the House of Commons. Now, top tip, I'll wait to see what the polls are. So if the Tory party has somehow managed to climb itself back and Reform is somehow dying, then I'll call for a Conservative to stand. And if Reform are in the position they're in now and the Conservatives are in the position they're in now, I'll call for Reform to stand against the Speaker of the House of Commons, and I will call for one candidate and say that is justified and that the other parties should not and should support that candidate on the basis that the Speaker has behaved in such a disgraceful manner, so utterly failed to protect the reputation of the House, which he has done, in my view, by allowing government minister after government minister to constantly lie. The Prime Minister misled the House over the cost of the Chagos Islands. He said it was 3.5 billion, it's 35 billion. Right, that is much more important than Boris being in a room with a slice of cake that nobody ever ate. Okay? So when the time comes, I have a reckoning planned for the Speaker of the House of Commons. Gazmatron is very read about Keir Starmer, but I thought had a point to make, which is that he felt that Keir Starmer hates the indigenous British people. Now, I'm always a bit cautious of the word indigenous because, again, I think we've been multi-ethnic for a very long time. We very stupidly and very evilly expelled our Jews, but thank goodness we got them back. And so I don't accept a single ethnos point about the British, and I never will. But it doesn't matter what ethnos it is. What that person is sensing is that the Keir Starmer hates ordinary people. And he actually hates ordinary people regardless of their race. So it doesn't matter what race you are. You're universally loathed and despised. The man hates everybody who's ever been to Wetherspoons. And that's because they have convinced themselves that they are an aristocracy, that they are so elite and so clever and so marvellous that we ghastly little proles will have to do as we're told and should really know our place. And that's what I wanted to answer. Kay says, hi, Stephen. Does the first past the post system work for the 21st century Britain? Thanks and have a nice weekend. I'm a big defender of first past the post. Okay. And I think we're seeing it work. No political party has any right to exist. And PR has a tendency to keep political parties alive for far too long once everybody obviously hates them, but 10% of the population still vote for them, which is technically enough for them to do an technical. FTP, first past the post, is designed to kill political parties when they mess up. I think the Labour Party is dead man walking. So I'd be very surprised. I mean, if Jezbollah takes off, which I think it will take a massive chunk of their vote. I think the Green Party will take a massive chunk of their vote. And I don't think they've got very much left. So I think come the next general election, they really are dead. And I think the more interesting intellectual question at the moment is, are the Tories dead today? Are they going to die tomorrow? are they going to see which way the wind's blowing and somehow save themselves? Um, uh, Hillary's had her mitochondrial DNA done, which I would thoroughly expect of every lovely in this group to be interested in their ancestry and proud of it. And whatever it is, I think we should all be terribly proud. The story of humanity is remarkable in a way. We don't really get high numbers of humans until the end of the 18th century because we're quite fragile. I mean, if anybody's seen one of our babies, the death in childbirth for women, if there's no modern medicine, is 50%. So it's really hard for humans to get to very high numbers. And, we need a lot of calories, but we had to invent farming and, lots and lots of difficulties for our entire species. So I just think we should be very, very proud of us. And yes, we've got different genetic heritages and diversity, and that's fine. But, that we should be proud of these things. And we have different facial features quite often, or our hair colours are different, or types are different. It doesn't mean that any one is more valuable than the other. That was what the shouty German man was on about, and he was a loon. We should just be, nice to each other. And it was very good to see. I don't know if anybody saw the interview with Mike Graham this morning from a very, very decent Pakistani Muslim lady who has been forced out of Luton with death threats because she's a decent human being. So I just call us. The future, I think, of our country is what I call the coalition of the decent. All the decent people are going to come together, and that's what we're going to do. And the lovelies are at the heart of the decency. The lovelies, Lubna, yes, she was called Lubna, sorry, yes, she was. And the lovelies, our loveliness is the core of this, and we will get it back. We're so going to win. We're so going to win. They're going to have these last gasps and these little fights. But we're going to win, and we're going to conquer the world with chocolate digestives. We're going to get everything back with cake and tea and just being lovely. They don't have a weapon against us. They're prepared to fight an enemy that doesn't exist. Thank goodness. They desperately want to fight fascists who, as far as I can tell, don't exist. I've certainly never met one. I don't know where these rare and rarefied creatures are supposed to be hiding in our country. Somebody obviously lost them down the back of the sofa, because we seem to have a complete surfeit, or a complete lack of fascists, I should say. But anyway, I'm still moving off the questions. Carolyn said she didn't have a question and just wanted to say hello, which was lovely. And I just wanted to point out that that's a lovely thing to do, and we are the lovelies. Denise says, the police, as I understand it, are answerable to the law of the land and not to the government. Why then are they becoming politicised? Should the College of Policing be abolished? Yes. So Denise, once again, a very intelligent question from you. This is exactly the root of the problem. Okay, you create the College of Policing. It doesn't have a job. Hey, you've created it. You've a load of people who don't have a job, but they have to come into work every day and pretend that they have a job, or they'll lose their job. And they're paid an awful lot of money, so they want to do that. So the College of Policing, and this is very common. This is Ofcom. This is all the regulators. They don't really know what their job is. They don't really have one. And they sort of slide into politics just to give them something to do. So the College of Policing decides that its job is to go around and teach police forces how to police. Right, well, Robert Peel did. So just do that. Oh, no. They decide that their job is to teach police forces identity politics and critical, thinking or critical race theory, not critical thinking, forgive me. And all of this absolute garbage that culminates in the officers, and I've tweeted about it quite harshly to the officers, but you've got to be harsh. Hello, Dave. That it culminates in officers doing totally ridiculous things. And what's been really nice, again, I do bang on about this. I know once we've fixed all this, we finally put identity politics back in its box. I don't actually intend to ever again need to tell anybody that I'm bisexual, unless I'm actually dating them. That just doesn't seem like something. Once we fix the whole system, that can all go away. But I've been very proud of same-sex attracted men and women who've just gone, stop with the rainbow crap. Stop it. And Darren Grimes, who I saw at a party recently, and I think he's a marvelous and impressive young man. Whatever your politics, we should encourage young people who are absolutely impressive. And he was talking with Benjamin Butterworth, who I also adore. Although they're very different on the political spectrum, another impressive young man who, I think has a lot to offer our country. So I'm broadly in support. And it's been really nice to watch same-sex attracted people just go, no, stop with the rainbow crap. Stop it. Stop it now. Stop it. And it's largely because I don't want anybody to think I have anything in common with grown humans who wear fetish gear in public. That is not respectable. That is awful. And get away from the children. And I don't know why I have to say that twice. Just like, get away from the children. Now, anyway, so Denise, very good and pertinent. The problem is the College of Policing. Dana, hi Stephen, and all the lovelies. We all know that PN has repeatedly misled Parliament. Why is it not contempt of Parliament? I've sort of touched on this already. The Speaker is failing. Okay. The appropriate rules are not being enforced because they're supposed to be enforced by the Speaker. We have a very strict legal rule that the courts can't, and that's to stop courts turning into dictators, which I approve of. So I do believe in the Bill of Rights. But the net result is that when Parliament misbehaves, you have to call it out. So during the Boris Kangaroo Court, I was approached firstly by a low-ranking member of the government who said I shouldn't be saying what I was saying. And then I was approached by a friend who just happens to be an MP who was like, you really shouldn't say what you're saying. And to both of them, I said, I will say what I'm saying because what I am saying is true. And I don't care if it is popular today. One day, everybody will know that what Parliament is doing by having anonymous witnesses making anonymous allegations, by not allowing his lawyer to cross-examine, by barely allowing his lawyer to speak, by forcing him to do it on a show trial, this is wrong. This is unjust. And if the might of Lord Panic making his opinion public couldn't get them to realise they were doing wrong, I knew I wasn't going to change their minds, but I was damn well going to stand with truth and justice and not sell it out or stay silent or pretend or somehow endorse the Kangaroo Court. And remember, those were across party. So I've called members of the Tory party, one of whom is still a Tory MP, as well as Harriet. I've actively insulted members of the Conservative Party, and I am more than happy to do so because the behaviour was disgraceful. And ultimately, we do need to go back to having knights and justice and goodness. And life is not about self-interest. Life is about doing what is morally right and good. And I will believe that forever. No one will change me. Samantha, fined for riding a skateboard without insurance. Now, Samantha, I had to go away and look all this up. I think the skateboard without insurance, I don't understand the alleged 6 points on the non-existence license. So that might just be, I don't know why that comes from. And I don't see how legally that can be done. And yes, that is obviously challengeable. I found that Manchester City Council has a bylaw against skateboards. I think there are statutory laws against electric vehicles, which might include an electric skateboard. But I suspect what was happening here in London was that there was a local bylaw. What I would do if we're going to fix the country is, I'm just going to keep banging on this message. We have too many laws. Okay, so we're going to need to delete loads. And at the same time, we should probably take away the power of everyone who can make a law to make a law. We need to put the powers back in one place that we can all watch and pay attention to. And I don't think local councils should be making bylaws. Not because in an ideal society you wouldn't have local council making bylaws. Maybe you would. But because I think we're so far away from being an ideal society, we're in such a bad way that we just need to simplify, absolutely simplify for a couple of years. And then let's, maybe think about broadening it out a bit. But let's go absolutely pare back to the bone so that we get to know what we are, so that everybody knows what the laws are. Most grown adults in our country with a vote will be able to understand their legal system. That is where we must get to now, because we are so far from that we must get that back. Mags, hi Stephen and all the lovelies. Hope you have a good week. I was just reading that uncontrolled government plan to make it illegal to photograph immigrants crossing the channel. How are we supposed to know how many have arrived? Mags, we're not supposed to. They literally think the solution to every problem is to hide it. We are governed by toddlers. We are literally governed by people whose idea is that if they just put it under the rug, we won't notice that there's a massive rug. Why is our rug the size of an elephant? Please, government. Oh. So, Mags, that's exactly what they're trying to do. Trump, you mentioned, Alison Pearson's got a lot of faith he's going to come in and rescue us. I do like it whenever America turns its attention on our government because they scuttle away like the cowards they are. And for at least a few weeks, we get a bit of peace, and then they bring back their control freakery when they think they can get away with it. So if you have American friends, praise them. I'm going to spend a lot of time being very nice to Americans. And sometimes I'm just so grateful that they exist. And this must be what Churchill felt like. It must be. Somebody's mum. Sue's mum. What's going on? Sorry, I only get the little box, so it's really hard. I can't see. Oh dear. Sorry, Sue. I'm really sorry to hear that. Please give your mother my best wishes. That I can do. When I set my Twitter account to private, the one thing I really missed was that if somebody doesn't follow you, you can't say things like, please give the person my best wishes, because they'll never see it. So please, Sue, pass on my best wishes for her speedy recovery to your mum, which I'm sure all the lovelies. Yeah. Exactly, of course they do. Catman, hi Stephen. I just seen the X story that Lammy has gifted 20 million to a Canadian trans activist group. This is just shocking. This is just a shocking waste of our money. Even if it's lawful, it's up the wall, isn't it? We all know it. It's absolutely disgraceful. We do have laws about public use of public money and funds. I think Scotland might get round to using theirs a bit faster than we will, but we need to get a grip on spending. And there may very well be prosecutions. Not now. Obviously, the entire system is politically compromised. But in the day, there may well be prosecutions. It may well be that, because I have a sense of keeping the country together, so it may well be not in our interests to get that vindictive, and we'll have to see. But £20 million of our money to promote trans nonsense in Canada, yes, that is a disgrace, a moral, ethical disgrace, a sewer. That is a sewer. David Lammy is a sewer. He supported the current Syrian regime, which is also a moral sewer. Evil. Sai said, lots of press recently about members of the public intervening to stop shoplifting offences to detain the perpetrators. Aside from the obvious dangers, how does one stand legally? When I was trained, and then Sai goes into explaining pace. There's two different concepts at work here, which I think is quite important, particularly when you remember those gentlemen on the tube. There is the power of arrest. That is to place someone under arrest and then to deny them their liberty. We restrict that quite a lot. So you can only do that for what's called an indictable-only offence, although there's a bit of leeway to the fact that you won't necessarily know what those are. But the much more serious criminal offences, and you can't do it if there's a police officer present, because the police officer should be the one arresting the person for doing the indictable offence. So there are limits on it, and shoplifting is very unlikely to be indictable only. I think shoplifting, I'm just bad with criminal law, but I just know I think it's very unlikely, if not impossible, for shoplifting to be indictable only. It doesn't really matter for our purposes. But, and this is the big but, there is something else, which is called self-defense in the prevention of crime. So if you see criminality going on and there are no officers, like on that tube train, and you need to physically act now to stop a crime, you're not arresting anybody. You're not exercising the power of arrest. I wouldn't say that any of those gentlemen on the tube train used the power of arrest. They're not purporting to detain the person in custody. They're using reasonable force to stop a crime. And you can do that in lots more circumstances than you can arrest somebody. And that's just technical criminal law. We probably want to simplify all of this. Again, I want to pare us back to simple rules that we all know. It's the solution to everything. And then we can get self-help back because everybody's got confidence and everybody feels better. Right. Have I missed? No, no, Hillary now. I normally save Hillary till last, but I have not saved Hillary till last. Poor Hillary. Just to say, I feel like lost my muchness. Very upset about the Ricky James trial. Yeah. I can understand it. I hope I've got to the nub of it. The core of what's been upsetting. That was. Oh, bless you. Sorry. Gentlemen. Yes, Denise, I think they were. I think they absolutely were. And I went on Martin Daubney to say it because he's exactly the type. Martin, built solid. And as I said, he's the type who would run forward to protect women and girls. I am not, a physical hero, but we had an altercation at our local sports centre. We were having accounts for the local elections, and a group of about 100 people arrived with blaring noising and sirens and tried to break into the sports centre to change our result that had been announced, and were very, very angry and were very confrontational. They managed to get through security guards and into the lobby, and I just went, this is bad, this is bad. And I just looked and I found every woman and older man, and there were no children because it was quite late. I mean, anyway, why would a child want to go to such a thing? And I just gathered us all. I said, just look, everybody, just come over here, just let's go stand by the fire exits. So all the drama was over there. Let's go stand by the fire exits. Now, there's somebody on this call who ran the other way, but she's responsible for her own safety. And it's not my fault that she's one of my most adored loons. But that's the type of man I am. So my instinctive reaction is, right, it's all kicking off. We're going to go now. Just that very British sort of, right, don't draw attention to yourself, just head towards the back exit where they don't know. And we managed to get control of the situation. The doors were secured, and eventually people were arrested. But had the situation progressed, I would simply have gone out the fire exits and taken everybody out the fire exits and then closed the fire exits behind me. Because I think that angry humans often don't pay that much attention. So you can sort of just segue away, and then we would have, moved to a safer area. But yes, they are gentlemen, those gentlemen. But anyway, back to Hillary's questions. What are the gunning principles the FSU mentioned when talking about the working group that Angela Rayner has set up, who are going to define the definition of Islamophobia? They're really bad, Hillary. They're really bad. We don't want any definition we don't want to turn any criticism of religion into racism. We only ever do it for Jews and Sikhs because the bad people never let a Jew say, I'm not a Jew anymore. I've sent Nana, if she's true to her word, she's going to watch Cabaret tonight, because I think we're living through the Weimar Republic, and there's a deeply moving part in Cabaret where this really lovely, charming, very, very respectable Jewish young man who's going to, he thinks his life is made because he's going to marry a wealthy heiress who's lovely, and they're going to have kids, and it's going to be a lovely, lovely life in Germany as far as they think. And at a certain point, this character says, I've converted to Protestantism. I've converted. And the tragedy of that, the pain of that moment, because we know that the Germans did not let those Jews escape. They didn't let them. And that's why we treat Jews and Sikhs as a very special category. Islam has got, billions of worshippers. No, you're not a race. Calm down. And neither is Christianity. And as an open Christian, I'm more than happy to accept that. So the whole Islamophobia definition is nonsense. Do go back and read Cabaret. We are not yet at the pushback, but it will come unless we fix things, which is why we're going to fix things. Sorry, it breaks me. It's not human. It's not human. Humans are capable of such beauty and goodness and such utter evil. And it has always shocked my heart. I keep mentioning Tolkien in public, but that's largely because I'm mentioning Tolkien a lot in private. A lot of my friends are turning out to be Tolkien fans. But there's a line, which is, what can men do against reckless hate? And the only thing we can do is try and fight and never lose hope. And we will never lose hope. That's what loveliness is about. The sheer loveliness, the power of cake will never go. They will never be able to stop people liking cake. Never. They'll never be able truly to destroy pubs. They will come back. Goodness will come back. Goodness and hope cannot be destroyed. But yes, Hillary, have you stuck? You've just stuck. She's questioned 1 and 2, but question that obviously 3 questions. House of Lords Appointment Commission Whole Act is an advisory department. I know what it is. Sponsored by the Cabinet Office. How much backdoor influence? Well, this government's got nothing but backdoor influence everywhere. I don't trust a word it says. It lies through its teeth, and it seems designed to lie. And in fact, it seems its only policy is to lie. Its only plan is to lie, and it's not going to work. I've left it till the end, but to say that I met Sarah. So I went to the new media thing for Maya because it's Maya. I do adore him. He's just my friend. Nothing else. He's just a good human being. And I met Sarah immediately I got there, who immediately apologized for spelling my name being spelt wrong on the lanyard, which, by the way, when Small came back from Small's mother's yesterday, she picked up the lanyard and Small said, "They spelled your name wrong." It's like, yeah, but they apologized. So I don't notice because I don't care. It doesn't bother me, little things like this. I worry about the big things, and I'm an equity lawyer anyway. So if I'd go even further, I'd say that there's no such thing as spelling, because spelling isn't law. It's just a convention. And you can say, but what about the dictionary? But the dictionary has no legal force. And then you have to ask which dictionary. And the Americans have got dictionaries which spell things differently. Why does an American legal dictionary have? Why does an American dictionary have no legal force here? Yeah, exactly. So spelling is much more fluid, and as is grammar than people think. And what tends to happen is that people have a very sort of angry teacher and have a sort of formative age, and therefore spend the rest of their life thinking that X rule is the most important rule. And they enforce it. One of my brothers is Stephen. Exactly. I think people do it with me because they think it's the posher version. I mean, I've known that all my life, that Stephen with a V is not the posher version. But I don't care. And I've also really never really liked the word. And as Small pointed out, Small laughed and said, "Well, they didn't do the cardinal sin, did they? They didn't do the real bad. They didn't call you Steve." People have been known to almost die for calling me Steve. I mean, there is a coolness enters the atmosphere. If you want to call me Steve, even on the hottest of days, you might suddenly find your hands are covered in ice. I just don't do it. But I got to meet Sarah, which is lovely, and it fulfilled part of that dream that one day we will all meet. And I can confirm that Sarah is lovely. And Sarah's husband is lovely. And it's so obvious. I got to meet loads of people. Maya had loads of ordinary people at the party. So I got to speak to loads of them because, my mates and that, there's not that much to chat about. We see each other far too much. So it's much more interesting to talk to new people. And I got talking to a lovely couple from South Worcestershire, which is where I grew up. So I got to speak a lot about South Worcestershire, which is deeply moving and really fun for me. Right. The last question is going to Charles. It's not your husband. Oh, I'm sorry. I've married you off. I've married her off. Oh dear, oh dear. I shouldn't be marrying people off. No, you lovelies, don't let me interfere. I shall go into the West and remain Galadriel myself. So, partly works for LFB. I don't know where LFB is. Oh no, Hillary, I'm in trouble. Now Hillary's laughing at me. Oh, quick, back to the questions. Charles, hi, Stephen. I know you must know an awful lot about the law. Well, we sort of hope that, Charles, but I mean, we never get cocky. Can you tell me if it's okay to write my own will and get 2 persons to witness it? Would I then need to register it somewhere? So just to go back to law, you can write your own will, and that's part of our approach to law, which is the self-help idea that you can actually do things and yourself and look after yourself and run your own affairs and your own life perfectly well. I mean, I know people who have set up their own companies. That's perfectly lawful. You don't need, on the continent, you're very infantilized by this constant need to have, what's it called? A notary public signing things off and stamping things. is a complete whiz for anybody qualified as a notary public, which one of my more entrepreneuring, is that the nice word for it? Friends was trying to convince me was a jolly whiz 20 years ago and that I should get qualified as a notary public. And was like, this is just tops, total tops. So you can write your own will. Take care to do so lawfully. Do consult a legal professional if you worry, and if you want things to be done. Would I need to register it somewhere? Can I give life advice to everybody? I have done an awful lot of fights over wills in my legal life in the High Court in London, and I have watched entire fortunes, millions of pounds, wasted, squandered on lawyers. If I have one top tip for everybody, it's to tell all of your loved ones what's in your will. Don't leave any surprises. We have something else called the 1975 Act, which will come in if you've got a dependent child or somebody who needs you, or an ill child, and they're economically dependent on you, and you don't leave them any money, then they can make a legal claim. But still, fundamentally, I think the most important thing any of us can do with our will, and I know it's hard, and I know we don't want to be vulgar, or raise the issue of, death, because we're very British, but honestly, I would just raise it with all the loved ones, particularly if you're a big family and there's lots of children. Try and explain to each of your children why you're doing what you're doing, so that you don't want any of one of them to feel unloved. Grief is a monstrous emotion, as I'm sure most of you know, and it's very, very difficult for people to deal with. We have really tight deadlines in probate, which I don't think that helps. I think people would kick off when they don't have to, purely because they've accidentally got the impression that mum and dad liked them less. And that's a very dangerous situation to be in. So my top tip on wills, you can draft them yourselves. My father has drafted his himself, which terrifies me, but I mean, he should have got it right. Woo! But the other thing to say is that in my experience, if you draft a will badly or you die without a will, there are situations when your money can go to the state, called beneficantia. And I've always discovered that department of HMRC to be incredibly loving and kind. And if they can find somebody else to give the money to, they will. So if you ring them up and go, technically you get this house, but actually there was a child, there was a blah, and they'll go, oh, okay, no, we're fine, we don't worry, and we'll let's get the paperwork sorted. And they're very understanding, but you don't take risks. Do just talk to your family. It's easy advice for me to give because I have a small person and everything will go to small, except a small portion that will go to my Oxford College because they raised me. And they will be told to use that money on poor children who need it. And that's not just feeding them, that's making sure they can have a bit of fun as well, because, why not have some cake? They probably want booze. But everything is left to my son secured as he has sent. Oh, Hillary, it's lovely. Given my girls my will, store safely. Exactly. It's just so much easier. You don't want these things. And I would see these fights. I mean, quite often, I'm afraid, ladies, and I don't mean to be rude, but ladies, there is a fight between first daughter and second or third wife. Maybe that's just part of human nature. I don't know. But I do think the man in concern could have stopped that fight if he'd just spoken to everybody. And it's a really clever way to deal with the problem. There's also a tendency at the moment for solicitors to recommend discretionary trusts to avoid tax. Avoiding tax is perfectly sensible. You'll never find me criticising that. But discretionary trusts, again, who is the trustee, who's in charge of it? They've got a lot of power. They can do bad things. They cause a lot of fights as well, in my view. But so that was, maybe I shouldn't have put that as the last question because it's slightly grim. But actually, everybody's being lovely to everybody. Had to make him a trustee. Good. Everybody seems to be doing fine. I'm just looking for a question. I thought I saw one earlier, but now I can't see it in the tiny box of tininess. My ex-husband didn't leave a will and remarried, so my girls didn't receive anything. Hey ho, they have me. That's just bad planning. Damn. The fighting family, I know it can get nasty. Yeah. Write a will. I mean, I've got my father's will. So um, he wrote it and then he gave it to me. He handed it to me and I went and I just put it in my copy of his book, which I've read. And I haven't looked at it for like 25 years because I don't want to and I don't want to think about it. I get really squeamish. There are people who are getting squeamish. I get that. I get that. Mine's literally, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's still there, but I don't check because I just don't want to think of my father not being around. And I get that. Mother's love is priceless. Exactly. I need help with my will. Who can I get help from? Well, Dave, that depends. If you've got money, then you go to what's called a private client solicitor who does wills. And they should draft you a will. And if you don't go to one in London and go to one at, I don't know where, Dave, are you in the country? Vaguely. Like, what's the nearest big city? This is good telling. A solicitor, Dave. Exactly. But if Dave types faster, I might actually point somebody else. But anyway, you probably got perfectly employees that aisle. That's not a city, Dave. But that's probably because I'm forcing you to. Of White. Isle of Wight. Oh, that is a challenge, Dave. I don't know any lawyers on the Isle of Wight. Is that across from Southampton? There'll be perfectly decent solicitors in Southampton. And that's not to criticise solicitors in the Isle of Wight who might be amazing, but that was just like the biggest challenge anybody's ever grasped me in law. But Southampton, there will be more than capable solicitors. So I would go to them. If you really can't afford it, then Citizens Advice do give advice, and the government websites do give advice. Only ever trust actual government websites on drafting a will, not because lots of people haven't made free content available. They have, but so have shysters. Also be aware that a lot of the sponsored links, which claim to be the government, are not the government. So go to the free unpaid link that is the government. That will be .gov.uk. And listen to their advice. HMRC probably give very good advice on this, and you can work it all out. Anyway, I have to go because Small has not been fed. Good work. Good work, everybody. Lovely to see everybody. And KBO. Take care.